Hello and welcome to another package of news from the power sector produced by the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN. This is Power Wheel and I am Omelogo Nadi. As usual, we get down to business with events in our Power News segment. The management of Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, has asked the African Development Bank, AFDB, to get involved in the development of Nigeria power sector, especially the privatization process. Details of that call are here presented.
The interim managing director and chief executive officer of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, Mr. Usman Gur Mohammed, gave the advice during a meeting between the Transmission Company of Nigeria management and the team from the African Development Bank in Abuja recently.
In development, the bank needs to do more. If you look at the power sector reform that was done, you see that the entire power sector reform that was done in Nigeria, the bank didn't have much role in it. And I believe that if the bank had had a role inside, we wouldn't have done it the way we do it. So the non-loan aspect of the bank, I think we need to do more, because we have certain tradition and culture that is also different from other donors, and that will come to bear.
Mr. Mohammed also noted that during the entire power sector privatization process in Nigeria, an international financial institution like the African Development Bank was not fully involved.
If you look at the privatization of Nigeria now, for example, you will discover that we have done a privatization that does not bring foreign investment, no foreign capital, and the sole assets that does not have equity. How do you run a company without equity? This happened because there is a disconnect between the policymakers and those people who are advising on the privatization.
Mr. Mohammed also stated that TCN, which is the only government company in the power sector chain that was not privatized, has been able to put in place development plans to strengthen the grid system with the launch of Transmission Rehabilitation and Expansion Program, TREP.
When we took over in TCN, the loss was 9.5. The agreed loss that is allowed by MITO, the NAC, Nigeria Electric Regulatory Commission for TCN, is 8.05. As at last December, we have brought our loss from 9.5 to 7.8. So we are even below the MITO order. And we are putting an aggressive plan that they have to reduce it to 7.5. When we launched the Transmission Rehabilitation and Expansion Program, this is our development objective actually, to rehabilitate, expand the grid, to stabilize and provide necessary flexibility, redundancy, and expand the wheeling capacity of TCN.
During the meeting, Mr. Mohammed further disclosed things that should be done to stabilize the grid system.
What we have now come up with is that we are going to do a massive reconducting of lines, starting with the balance from the World Bank project. Sorry, I have not completed that statement. It's from the World Bank project. We are going to take 20 million from Egypt, which is remaining, buy conductors, and our engineers will do the installation. But one thing that we have also achieved is what we call frequency control. We have achieved frequency control of 49.5 and 50.5 Hz, something that has not been achieved in Nigeria in the last 20 years. And because of this achievement, even West African Power Pool has agreed to synchronize the energy from Nigeria with the rest of West Africa, because our frequency has become the same.
The Honorable Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, has clarified the state of the Rural Electrification Agency, REA, power projects in 9 Nigerian universities and 1 teaching hospital, saying the procurement followed extant law. The Honorable Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola,
who stated this while speaking before the House Joint Committees on Power and Procurement at the National Assembly in Abuja, said there was no evidence of fraud in the project execution.
With regard to the investigation about fraud in the award of contracts amounting to 42 billion naira. Let me say, first of all, and very clearly, that there is no contract award for 42 billion naira. There is no such award. Let me say for the record very, very clearly.
The minister, who appeared along with the managing director of the Rural Electrification Agency, Mrs. Damilola Ogumbi, and other top officials of the ministry, explained the issues.
In December, at the Federal Executive Council meeting, was an approval to award contracts for 38.9 billion, not 42. And under the Procurement Act, we are only obliged to pay 15% of the amount we award.
Addressing the committees, jointly chaired by Honorable Dan Asukwo and Honorable Wole Oke, Fashola said,
we then presented this in a budget proposal under the 2017 budget plan. We asked, I think then the total cost was 32 billion or so. We asked for a budget of 20 billion because we wanted to start all the 37 simultaneously, or at least half of them. The appropriation approval that came back was 9 billion. And in speaking frankly, I will speak today. During the budget reconciliation meetings, when I complained that the budget of my ministry had been reduced, the chairman of the Power Committee said he reduced that project from 20 billion to 9 billion. When I asked him why, he said, well, you can't get everything you want. And we laughed over it. And I said, okay, we will start this project, demonstrate to you that it can work, and I'm sure that in 2018, you will become a champion for this project.
Fashola explained that 39 universities and teaching hospitals were to benefit from the project in phases, with memorandum of understanding signed with the institutions before the public procurement began.
Recently, wood loggers in Ukana town by 9th Mile Nsukka Road, Enugu, damaged TCN's transmission line between Oji River and Nsukka in Enugu State, cutting off electricity supply to the 2 by 7.5 MVA 63 by 11 kV transmission substation in Nsukka, which supplies electricity to Nsukka town in Enugu State. The Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, made the discovery after several attempts to transmit electricity through its 66 kV transmission line failed. It then dispatched its line patrol team, who discovered that loggers fell an Iroko tree, which damaged 3 spans of conductors and cross arms of towers, 60 to 64. TCN's technical crew quickly visited the site and assessed the extent of damage to the line and towers. TCN then sourced some materials from the company's stores, while the others were procured to effect repairs and restore service. The company's technical crew worked assiduously to restore the line. Restoration was completed within 4 days and power supply restored to electricity consumers in Nsukka town.
It is unfortunate that repeated calls on citizens to desist from carrying out activities such as wood logging, laterite excavation, bush burning, encroachment, among others, near transmission lines and towers right of way, has been persistently flouted by some citizens who are also beneficiaries of electricity transmitted through the same lines. It is strongly advised that people should refrain from this act that tends to jeopardize stable electricity supply to our homes and businesses.
He noted that TCN will do everything possible to ensure that its transmission lines are protected from vandalism and such carelessness as displayed by the wood loggers. He, however, appealed to those who have information about the loggers to report to the nearest security agency or TCN office. Low revenue collection has been identified as the major hindrance to investment in the development of transmission infrastructure to boost the power sector value chain. The Management of Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, made this known when the Interim Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of TCN, Mr. Usman Gur Mohammed, spoke at the next year January Power Dialogue in Abuja. Take a listen.
Mr. Mohammed, who spoke on the theme Transmission Discourse, Past, Present and Future, noted that TCN needs more funds to invest in infrastructure, but expressed difficulty in doing that as its revenue collection from the electricity market is just at 40% due to liquidity issues among operators.
At that time we came, Manitoba has managed Transmission Company of Nigeria for 4 years and handed over to a Nigerian who managed it for 5 months, and then we took over from them. Now, when we took over Transmission Company of Nigeria, it is a company that hitherto before, I also want to inform you that I'm one of the people who work on the power sector reform. So most of the things that were done in the power sector reform, I was part of it. And some of the studies that we did to prepare TCN for the reform, I can vividly remember them. For example, one of the studies we did was what we called change management consultancy, which was done by Red Electrica in 2005.
Mr. Mohammed also said TCN had challenges of an aging workforce and poor funding, which led to a discourse with donors on ways to ameliorate the challenges and accelerate capacity building.
When we took over, the grid was very, very unstable. We have implemented few things in place that has, to some extent, stabilized the grid. There are some things that still need to be done. One of the things that we're able to successfully implement is the frequency control. We are actually working on implementing, we have achieved 49.5 to 50.5 for more than 90% of the time. We are working to move to 49.75 to 50.25. This is what we want to implement this year. We have also been able to look at how do we raise investment. Because transmission to stabilize the grid, you need about 3 or 4 things. One, you need to have investment in critical infrastructure. There are certain lines that we need to reinforce, and we need to build new lines to stabilize the grid. Then we also need to have a functional SCADA, which as we speak with you, we don't have completely functional SCADA, because the SCADA can see less than 40% of the grid, and it's also characterized by a lot of deficiencies. Then we need to have the spinning reserve. Spinning reserve, we have looked at what was the problem, and we have done some recommendation to that. We are waiting for them to approve. The next thing, we have to have the frequency control, which I told you we have been achieved.
The Executive Director, Engineering and Technical Services of the Niger Delta Power Holding Company, NDPAC, Engineer Ifeoluwa Oyedele, said the private limited liability company is owned by the federal, state and local governments. He pointed out that the company has been able to construct 1,635 kilometers of 330 kV double cycle lines and 720 kilometers of 132 kV double cycle lines.
If you are like me, you won't even know what NDPT is, because until I got to NDPT, I didn't have an idea of a company called NDPT. Most of you know NIPP. NDPT is a federal, it's a private limited liability company owned by the federal government, the 36 states of the federation, and the Federal Capital Territory, as well as the 774 local governments. This discourse is about the past, the present, and the future. Some of the problems are man-made. What I discovered was that we were not planning ahead. Most other nations plan 50 years ahead, 100 years ahead. But what happened was that when we build a generation station, we will overload it before we start building another one. Whereas in other economy, when it is exactly 50% filled up, they go on to build the next generation station. And that has been the problem. And here we are today, where the ones, I mean, where the generation companies are waiting for us to be able to wheel out what they can generate.
Engineer Oyedele said there was need to further increase transmission wheeling capacity of electricity in Nigeria. Hence, NDPC's collaboration with the TCN in this direction.
The wheeling capacity of TCN should actually be 2.5 times what the generation capacity is. And here we are today, where the ones, I mean, where the generation companies are waiting for us to be able to wheel out what they can generate.
Responding to questions from the audience, the IMD of TCN, Mr. Mohammed, spoke on TCN's immediate plans to improve transmission infrastructure this year.
Some of the things that we can do with contractors, we can actually do it in-house. And through in-house capacity, I can tell you that transformers that we spend a lot of money to do them, we are doing them at the rate of about 10% of what we normally pay contractors before in the past. So you see the kind of thing that we are doing to achieve results. Meaning we are using our in-house capacity to achieve some of those things. Then the next thing we need to do this year is that we have to completely complete NECHIP and close it. So any contractor that is under NECHIP that we discover that cannot close his work, because almost all the transformers are here. So we are going to cancel the contract and TCN engineers will complete the work. But we are not going to allow any one of them to extend to next year. And all the transformers have to be finished this year. So we are going to close NECHIP. This is this year. Then the next thing we need to do is that I've told you we are working on moving from 49.75 and 50.25, subject to the cooperation we are going to get from Junkos. This is a priority that we want to do this year. Also getting the spinning reserve in place. This is also a priority that we have to work to get it this year.
10 years is a big deal. It's a decade. That's why the Port Harcourt office of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, recently rolled out its drums in celebration of its 10 years of existence in South Nigeria. Here's the story of that festivity.
The regional office has been instrumental to the improved transmission of electricity around the southern region. The General Manager Transmission, TCN Port Harcourt Regional Office, Engineer Solomon Uyo-Uko, lauded the untiring effort of staff to deliver on their assigned responsibilities in spite of the harsh environment in the region.
Today makes another history in the annals of Transmission Company of Nigeria Port Harcourt region as we roll out drums, as you saw us drumming to the streets, to honor our God and recognize the great men that God used to lay the foundation of this dynamic region. While some locations in the region are calm and accommodating, others are hostile and daring. In all situations, God has always been there for us, mediating in times of hostility, providing wisdom and training and tending the such. In these 10 years, very minimal case of death occurred among staff. This is the Lord's doing, and it's marvelous in our eyes.
The Elders Women Meeting Dance Group of Rumobiokani in Obiakpo local government area of Rivers State spiced the event with traditional tunes. Members of staff who had put in meritorious years of service at the regional office were presented with awards, and the celebration afforded guests time to exchange pleasantries.
That was surely a celebration. We bring you more reports on the program with the Power Flash segment. You're still watching Power Wheel, a production of the Transmission Company of Nigeria. Time now for a short break. Please stay with us.
In the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, we transmit bulk electricity from power generating companies, GenCos, to distribution load centers of various distribution companies, DISCOs. Nationwide, we do not generate electricity, neither do we distribute same directly to electricity consumers. TCN has two business units, the Transmission Service Provider, TSP, and Independent System Operations, ISO. The ISO comprises of System Operation, SO, and Market Operation, MO. The business units all perform specialized functions under the TCN umbrella. Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, wheeling power for national economic growth. This message is brought to you by the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN.
The essential framework is to just accelerate action to ensure that the 2,000 megawatt that is available now gets to the grid and gets to the people, because more power is coming. We're expecting many more power plants to complete this year, which will add almost about 1,600 more megawatt to the grid, to the production this year. So we can't continue to accumulate power that is produced and doesn't get to people.
It gladdens us when your comments and views reach us. Let's hear what you have to say in our feedback segment.
I believe that what we have presently, which is the normal electrification, okay, that is coming from our dams, will still go a long way if we can manage it effectively. We all know that the tenures in the time past, they were spent a lot of money, invested a lot of money, but we can't actually see it. But well, things are getting better now in our various, in my own place, for example, where I stay in this city, I can actually testify that power is much better than what it used to be. But we still have a long way to go because it's not the same story everywhere. So let's focus on what we have right now. Let's make the best of the normal electrification that we generate. Let's generate it more. Let the money that the federal government is pushing into it, let it show more. Then we can now begin to talk about alternative source of power. If we cannot manage what we have, we can't manage any alternative source of power. That's my own opinion.
Thank you, sir. Since Nigeria is blessed with good weather, I will suggest that the government should use solar energy, should go for solar energy, since the sun, the weather is, we have a favorable weather condition in Nigeria. So I will suggest that the federal government should go for solar energy as well.
We thank God for the effort of the new administration that are going on in the Mambila power plant that are already inaugurated. We pray that such things will come up and make the power sector to be growth in the development of our society.
It's better, but this month I can't say. It has improved, but this month I can't say they've been taking the lights. Okay, thank you very much.
thank you for your time with us on the program. Please keep your views and comments coming. You can reach us through the various platforms there on your screen. Until the next episode of Power Wheel, I am Omelogo Nadi.